All right, everybody, let's look at this problem that's asking us to come up with a sine or cosine model based on a graph. So when I'm looking at a graph and determining am I going to pick sine or cosine, I'm looking at what happens at 0. So here's 0 right here in the middle. And you can see that I'm not hitting the origin, I'm hitting up here at a peak, at a maximum. So that means I'm going to pick cosine is going to be the foundation of my model because cosine starts at its peak. Right, and remember A is the distance between the midline and the peak, or the midline and the minimum. So you can see we're going up to 3/4 down to negative 3/4. So far that means that we have A equals 3/4 cosine. So I know 3/4 is my max and min, so that means that 3/4 is the amplitude. All right, and it's positive 3/4 because we are starting up at the top where typically cosine does. If it started down here and it looked like that, it started at its bottom and went up, then we would be looking at a negative 3/4. But because it's starting at its peak at 0, that's a positive cosine. All right, and then the other thing we have to get, the W or the omega, that's going to be determined by how long does it take to complete a cycle. And you can see we start at our max and we return to the max there at a half. So that means the period is a half, which means 1/2 is what we get when we divide 2 pi by that number, omega, that's right there in front of the x. And so doing a little bit of shifting around, multiplying both sides by w, and then multiplying both sides by 2. All right, 2 will get rid of the 1/2, so I have to multiply that by 2. I also have to multiply the right side by 2 to compensate, and I'm multiplying both sides by w as well to get the w out of the denominator. All right, and what we end up with is that w would equal 4 pi. So that's the number that needs to go inside the parentheses times the x. And so we ultimately end up with the equation y equals 3/4 cosine 4 pi times. Click there to get the pi. All right, you can always check this with your TI. So you type in y equals, I'm going to turn off my stat plot, 3/4 cosine, and then in parentheses I'm going to do 4 pi is second caret by x. Okay, do make sure you are in radian mode. All right, I'm going to make my window go between -4th, that's the leftmost tick I see here. Make the right end be 5/8. It's the right end that I see. All right, and then the x scale is what does each tick mark represent. And you can look on there just between 0 and the first tick mark and see that a tick mark is at every 1/8. All right, my y minimum is -3/4. My y maximum is positive. The scale is also 3/4. Tick marks I see on the y-axis. All right, I'm going to hit graph, and I should see basically what I see on the screen there in blue. That's what I want to see, right? I'm trying to come up with the equation for that sine wave or cosine wave in this case.